Far in the waters of the Pacific Ocean, thousands of miles from the nearest continent, there is a mysterious place more than 4,000 meters deep. Scattered across the ocean floor are strange little rocks. There are millions of them, and the fields they form cover an area larger than India. The place is called Clarion Clipperton, and the rocks found here are the world's largest reserves of manganese, nickel, copper, and cobalt. These resources are incredibly important. They are used to make smartphones, laptops, car and plane engines, electrical grids, and steel structures. The reserves are so vast that some metals are more abundant than all terrestrial deposits combined. Their value is estimated to be in the trillions of dollars. But there is a catch. These deposits are located in international waters and formally belong to no one. However, this does not stop dozens of countries that are already fighting for access to these treasures of the sea because they can become the new oil of the 21st century. Let's move on to ancient Rome, the capital of the once mighty empire. One of the key factors in its rise was salt, a strategic resource of the ancient world. Salt was used to preserve food, making it a vital commodity. The Romans began to control the supply of salt from the mouth of the Tiber River, from the ancient port of Ostia. Trade routes to the Adriatic Sea in the south passed through Rome. Control of this resource ensures the city's food security and promotes its growth and prosperity. Ancient Rome begins to make money from taxes on salt. This money is used to build infrastructure and finance successful wars. But why are we talking about ancient Rome? This story shows that since ancient times, people have sought to control resources and their delivery routes. This is often the key to the success of nations. Salt helped Rome become an empire. Gold contributed to the rise of medieval kingdoms. Oil made the United States and the countries of the Middle East the world's leading economic and military powers. Gas powered Russia's economy. The logical question is, what will be the next resource to bring wealth and prosperity? There is no answer, because even long-known resources can suddenly take on new meaning thanks to technology. Uranium, now known as the basis for nuclear weapons and powerful power plants, was once used to make porcelain a beautiful shade. Cobalt has a similar history. Since ancient times, it has been used to create a rich, dark blue color in ceramics and glass. But in recent decades, the need for it has increased dramatically. Another metal with a similar history is lithium. It too was once added to ceramics and glass. Today, like other rare metals, lithium and cobalt have become strategic resources. Lithium is the basis for the most popular energy source of the 21st century, lithium-ion batteries. Now let's do the math. Your smartphone has about 3.5 grams of lithium. A laptop has 20 to 50 grams of it. An electric scooter uses 1 to 2 kilograms. An electric car uses 10 to 50 kilograms. And an electric bus carrying passengers can require up to 400 kilograms of lithium. The number of battery-powered devices is growing rapidly every year. They are becoming larger, more powerful, and more technologically advanced, which means they consume more energy and more lithium. Look at the Mendeleev periodic table. Lithium is in third place. It's the lightest metal on the planet, and it's also one of the most reactive. If you drop lithium into water, it will instantly react, bubble, and dissolve like an aspirin tablet. Because of these unique properties, lithium is used to make compact and powerful batteries with high energy density. But where is it mined? The main suppliers of lithium are Argentina, China, Chile, and Australia, which produces almost half of the world's lithium. However, there is a nuance. 90% of Australian lithium is exported to China, where most of the production is concentrated. China not only processes lithium, but also owns deposits around the world. 51% of Australia's lithium deposits are owned by Chinese companies. The Argentine and Chilean deposits are also controlled by China through local companies. Now look at Bolivia, where very little lithium has been mined, but the country has the largest proven reserves. These reserves are located in the so-called lithium triangle of South America, which includes Argentina, Chile, and Bolivia. These three countries account for more than half of the world's proven lithium reserves. Who is winning the major lithium mining contracts in Bolivia? Russia's Rosatom Corporation and, once again, Chinese companies. Why is China buying up lithium and other battery resources so aggressively? The answer is simple. Lithium-ion batteries are the key to the future, and their biggest use today is in electric cars. Who is the largest electric car manufacturer in the world? No, it is not the American Tesla or even the European Volkswagen. The leader is the Chinese company BYD. It is China that today produces 3/4 of all lithium-ion batteries on the planet. What's more, Chinese companies control almost everything: lithium mining, processing, supply, and the production of other battery components. Take cobalt, for example. This metal makes batteries last longer, increases the number of recharge cycles, allows them to operate at low temperatures, and prevents explosions. Today, about 70% of the world's cobalt is mined in the Democratic Republic of Congo, often in the wild. However, the main investors and buyers of this metal are still the same Chinese companies. Now for nickel, 75% of all nickel is shipped to China, regardless of where it is mined. Manganese? Again, China is the main buyer. And what about graphite? The situation is the same. The main production is concentrated in China. In fact, China is creating a monopoly on the extraction and processing of all the key elements needed for battery production. This allows them to completely control their production domestically. How did they achieve this? It all started when China recognized the importance of energy security in the 20th century. In 1959, China's largest oil field, Daqing, was discovered in the north of the country. In the 1950s, China was an agrarian country, and the discovered oil fields fully covered its needs. This resource was enough to keep the country independent of the Soviet Union, with which relations were already beginning to deteriorate, and to export to Japan, which was experiencing an industrial and automotive boom. But by the late 1980s, China was embarking on major economic reforms and growing rapidly. New cities and a rapidly growing population demanded more and more energy, and thus more oil. In 1993, a historic moment occurs that will change not only China's development, but also the global energy market. China became a net importer of oil. Its own reserves were no longer sufficient, and the country began actively buying oil abroad. What does this have to do with lithium-ion batteries? They are a strategic move by China to reduce its dependence on oil. Now, for some context, who needs oil the most today? For years, the US was the main consumer. Now China is catching up, with India on the horizon. But notice how much faster China's oil consumption is growing than America's. While the US remains the largest consumer of oil, it is also the largest producer. This allows them to be less dependent on foreign suppliers. America is an automobile country where it is difficult to live without gasoline-powered transportation. Their railroads carry mostly freight, not passengers. Now imagine China. Its economy requires more and more energy every year: coal, oil, gas. The population is nearly 1.5 billion, cities are growing, people need cars, and long-distance transportation requires infrastructure. However, China faces a geopolitical competitor, the United States. America itself needs a huge amount of oil and is actively producing it, which allows it to influence world prices. In addition, the US has a military presence in regions where oil is produced and can disrupt supplies. The main suppliers of oil to China are the Persian Gulf countries, and the most popular delivery route is by tanker through the Strait of Malacca and the South China Sea. Here is a single but serious threat: the United States. Its ubiquitous military bases and navy pose a serious threat. If there is a conflict over Taiwan, for example, and China decides to use force, the United States and its allies could easily block the supply of Middle Eastern oil to China. And 75% of the oil China consumes comes from abroad. What to do in such a situation? Not to create conflicts in advance. This will allow you to maintain access to necessary resources. Look for alternatives to oil. Instead of mass imports of gasoline-powered cars, China is investing huge amounts of money in developing its own auto industry with a focus on electric cars. With a population of billions, China cannot afford to go the way of the United States, where almost every family has a car and the infrastructure is built primarily for cars. Instead, China is betting on high-speed rail. They may take decades to pay for themselves, but they reduce dependence on oil. In China's congested cities, officials are actively developing electric cars, electric bikes, and electric scooters to reduce the use of traditional transportation. Become a leader in renewable energy. Despite being the world's biggest air polluter due to its massive use of coal, China has also become the world's leading producer of solar energy. More importantly, China produces about 80% of the world's solar panels. When it comes to solar wafers and their technology, China's share is as high as 95%. When the European Union announced its famous Renewable Energy Directive in 2009, China saw an opportunity. Anticipating rising oil and gas prices, the Europeans were betting on wind turbines and solar panels. China quickly ramped up production, increasing volumes fivefold by 2018. In the process, it displaced competitors from Japan, Germany, and the United States. But China is in no hurry to shut down coal or nuclear power plants. Most of China's electricity is still generated by coal, the dirtiest energy source. But local engineers are actively developing cleaning technologies to minimize environmental damage. At the same time, the authorities are not forgetting to invest in new energy sources to ensure a sustainable energy future for the country. The European Union is experiencing a record drop in electricity consumption as rising prices make many industrial plants unprofitable. Now look at China. There, by contrast, electricity production is rising, and coal, oil, and gas are being used without much restriction. And while China's multi-billion-dollar investments in solar panels and electric cars look relatively modest, the results are impressive. China is becoming a world leader in these technologies. Today, more than half of the world's new electric cars are made in China. They are technologically advanced, stylish, and, most importantly, affordable. Another interesting fact. In 1984, Germany's Volkswagen was the first foreign company to open an automobile production plant in China. The Shanghai Volkswagen Company joint venture was signed in the presence of German Chancellor Helmut Kohl. Today, it is no longer European companies that are opening production facilities in China, but Chinese manufacturers that are trying to enter the European market. However, the EU authorities are not in a hurry to welcome them. At the beginning of 2023, the EU countries sign an agreement that in 12 years they will completely stop selling new cars with internal combustion engines. But in the fall of the same year, the EU begins discussing the introduction of tariffs on cheap Chinese electric cars. European officials fear that the Chinese will destroy the European auto industry in the same way they nearly destroyed solar panel production. These fears are not unfounded. Chinese companies control the entire production chain, from mining raw materials to manufacturing batteries, a key component of electric cars. Let's compare the bottom line. The Volkswagen ID.3 uses only 1/3 of its own components. The Tesla Model 3 uses 68%, and China's BYD uses 75%. Why is that? It all starts with the history of BYD. The company was founded in 1995 by a 29-year-old chemical engineer who is now, of course, a billionaire. BYD did not start with cars or buses, but with the production of batteries for mobile phones. And the company's success is obvious. BYD holds a leading position among battery manufacturers, second only to Japanese and Korean companies that were the first to produce lithium-ion batteries. Well, for example, the technologically advanced EU countries decided about 10 years ago to bet on green energy to replace coal, oil, gas, and even nuclear power. But instead of independence, they got Chinese monopolies. The Chinese now control resources, technology, production, and distribution. As for places like the Cryan-Clipperton deposits at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, nobody touches them anymore. It's too far away and too expensive. In the Congo, cobalt can be mined with the cheap labor of millions of poor people, and it is much easier and more profitable than organizing mining from 4 kilometers deep. Moreover, the demand for cobalt is not yet high enough to make it a necessity. Therefore, at the moment, such deposits are a kind of reserve for mankind, which can be used in the future. But the resources will become strategic for certain countries only when a certain material, such as cobalt, becomes severely scarce or its price rises to a long-term advantage. This is why nations, through the International Seabed Authority, ISA, are cautiously probing the ground, or rather the ocean floor. The ISA covers resources in international waters, which is more than half of the world's oceans. To date, 168 countries have signed an agreement with the ISA. To get a permit for deep-sea exploration, and that's not even mining, you have to go through a complicated process. For example, a company from a large country like Canada has to negotiate a sponsorship agreement with a small developing country like Nauru and apply to the ISO. Don't be surprised if there are already dozens of such joint projects. No one wants to lose out in a potential race for resources that lie just off the coast. Regardless of the political system, the president, or the climate outside the window, everyone needs the same things: to cool off in the heat, to warm up in the cold, to have water at a comfortable temperature, to eat, and to use the TV, computer, or smartphone. And all of this requires energy. And to produce, transmit, and use it, you need natural resources, the very resources that humanity has been fighting for throughout its history. Don't believe those who say the age of resource competition is over. On the contrary, we are on the threshold of a great redistribution. The populations of South Asia and Africa are growing at an incredible rate. All these people will need more energy, more technology, and therefore more resources. This sets the stage for confrontations and possibly wars between those who have the resources and technology and those who only consume them. And yes, no matter what the new oil of the 21st century turns out to be, lithium, cobalt, or something else, the old oils, oil, coal, gas, are not going anywhere. They will be fought over, just as they have been in the past. If you like the video, don't forget to like and share it. See you in the future.